Francis Herman, born in England to immigrant parents of either Norwegian or Danish origin, led a mysterious life with several tragic events. Little is known about his early years in his native country, except for the quality of education and marriage to a wife who later passed away under unclear circumstances. In 1891, Herman moved to the United States, initially settling in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he married Bertha Wagner. Bertha, unfortunately, suffered from mental instability and was slated to be moved to a mental asylum. Strangely, just before her relocation, she also died mysteriously, and no formal investigation took place. A year later, Herman entered into marriage with Miss Lowen from Iowa, and their wedding ceremony took place in Minneapolis. By this time, he had relocated to Superior, Wisconsin, where he became the pastor of the First Norwegian-Danish Methodist Episcopal Church. Herman gained respect within the Scandinavian social circles and played a central role in the Ministers' Association. Living in Superior until the fall of 1893, Herman and his third wife decided to move to Salt Lake City, Utah. Shortly after their arrival, a baby was born, but both the infant and the mother succumbed to suspicious circumstances. Henrietta Clausen, originally from Sweden, arrived in the United States from Denmark in 1887 with no relatives in the country. She settled in Omaha, Nebraska, with the Johnson family, but was later brought to Salt Lake City due to an illness, courtesy of Tilly Anderson. Despite Anderson's return to Omaha, Clausen chose to stay in Salt Lake City, maintaining contact with her Omaha friends through letters. Upon Francis Herman's arrival in Salt Lake City, her letters often hinted at their strong friendship. In September of 1895, while Herman attended a church conference in the East, the 25-year-old Clausen was hired to care for his parsonage in the church. Everything seemed normal upon his return until a few days later when Clausen mentioned to Mrs. H. Peterson that she planned to visit Mrs. Hanson on Center Street. She assured that she would be back in the evening for services and would leave the next day to visit a female acquaintance in the country. Unfortunately, Clausen never returned. Concerned friends made inquiries about her whereabouts to the church and even Herman himself, but no information surfaced. The situation was perplexing, given her usual correspondence. To their surprise, Herman sent a letter claiming to have solved the mystery, stating that he had seen Mrs. Clausen in a brothel in Butte, Montana. On the day following Clausen's disappearance, the church's janitor, Mr. Johnson, recalled an unusual request from Herman. The pastor asked him to clear the pipes of the basement's furnace and prepare it for a fire. Although the furnace had been inactive since the previous blaze several years ago, Herman insisted on checking the pipes. Mr. Johnson began to follow the instructions, but when he was about to ignite the fire, Herman intervened, expressing his desire to handle the matter personally. That night, Ed Johnson, a young worker occupying a room upstairs, experienced overwhelming heat and a foul odor emanating from the furnace. He fell into unconsciousness, requiring a splash of water to revive him. Despite complaints from Ed's parents about the intense fire, Herman persisted until 6 o'clock in the evening, when it was finally extinguished. Strangely, the incident was soon overlooked and faded from memory. 2 weeks after Clausen's disappearance, Herman abruptly left, citing the need to attend a religious conference in the East. He reached out to a friend from Provo to replace him for the services. However, the substitute, an associate of Clausen, decided to inspect the basement. To his astonishment, he discovered various items beneath the grate in the ash receiver of the furnace, including 2 razors, an English-made butcher's knife from Herman's kitchen, a garter buckle, a belt buckle, and most disturbingly, human bones. Further examination revealed blood on the furnace door, and the buckles were identified as belonging to Clausen's clothing. Authorities were alerted, and an examination of the bones ensued, accompanied by the discovery of empty charcoal sacks. Mrs. Peterson, an acquaintance of both Herman and Clausen, reported having seen Herman carrying a large sack to the basement, though she was unaware of its contents. She also claimed that Herman had mentioned Clausen proposing marriage to him. Deeper inquiries uncovered 2 artificial teeth with metallic rivets among the ashes, matching the 6 artificial teeth Clausen possessed. A dentist named Kaiser confirmed this connection. Adding to the intrigue, a trunk belonging to Clausen surfaced in a pawn shop, with Hermann insisting he had sent it through an unknown expressman. The trunk contained Clausen's clothing, and it was revealed that Hermann had sold it himself, despite clandestinely receiving $300 from Clausen, presumably for safekeeping and investment. Given Hermann's known penchant for heavy drinking, as evidenced by various liquors in his study, it is speculated that he may have spent the money on alcohol. Additionally, shortly before his departure, the pastor had admitted to embezzling church funds and was awaiting the verdict from the church. Shortly after the grim discovery of Clausen's charred remains, Hermann found himself implicated in the disappearance and likely death of Annie K. Samuelson. Unlike Clausen, Samuelson held a position as a nursery governess in a reputable family and had relatives, including an aunt, in Salt Lake City. As a member of Hermann's church, she left her employment to become his housekeeper, enticed by the promise of marrying the pastor. On February 28, 1896, Samuelson informed her friends that she was heading to Ogden to marry Hermann the next day. However, the following morning, Hermann was in town as usual. When questioned about Samuelson's whereabouts by John Hanson, a fellow churchgoer, he informed the elderly man that she was still in Ogden and uncertain about her return. Unfortunately, Samuelson never did return. A few days after the revelation of Clausen's murder, a gold ring and watch that belonged to Samuelson were discovered in a pawnbroker's shop. Hermann had pawned these items shortly before his departure to Kansas City, Missouri. Further unfolding events indicated a criminal intimacy between the two. Samuelson not only made multiple payments for Hermann while they cohabitated, but also allowed him to perform an abortion on her in January. Although the exact method of Samuelson's demise remains unclear, Hermann's deep interest in human anatomy and dissection, coupled with the discovery of a box of poisonous drugs in his room, suggests a grim possibility. It is highly likely that he poisoned, dismembered, and subsequently disposed of Samuelson's body in the church's basement. Authorities pointed out that a few days before her disappearance, Hermann had a large box crafted at a nearby lumberyard, leading them to theorize that he stored her remains there and transported them with him to Kansas City. Despite police searches of the church grounds and the unearthing of numerous bones, some human, none were conclusively identified as Samuelson's remains. Hermann's culpability in her murder was definitively established through two separate letters written on behalf of Reverend Elfson and presiding elder Mork. On May 6th, Hermann visited the Elfsons, presenting some clothes to Reverend Elfson's wife, claiming they belonged to his deceased wife. Upon closer inspection, initials on some garments matched AKS, those of Annie K. Samuelson. A similar revelation occurred with Mork of Brigham City, as his wife also discovered the same initials on some garments. Additionally, Reverend Melby from Butte sent a letter indicating that Hermann had sold the trunk and a quantity of ladies' clothing while in Montana. Shortly after the disappearances of both Clausen and Samuelson, Hermann departed Salt Lake City on May 7th with Kansas City as his stated destination before embarking on a religious tour to Decorah, Iowa. However, authorities in both cities were unsuccessful in locating Hermann, prompting the announcement of a reward for his immediate arrest. He was eventually traced to a metro in St. Louis with suggestions that he might be concealing himself in either Cincinnati, Ohio, or a small town near Indianapolis, Indiana, possibly disguised as a florist. Over the ensuing years, several individuals were apprehended under suspicion of being Hermann, only to be released when proven otherwise. After 1897, there are no documented reports concerning Hermann, leading to the presumption that he successfully evaded capture. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing by clicking the red subscribe button below. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.